I have been playing competitive Pokemon for about 18 years. I started back when I was 11 years old and Generation 4 had come out. Over the years, I have tried many different formats in high-level play, so I like to believe that I have a decent idea of how the game works by now. In competitive Pokemon, making and preparing the right team is one of the most important aspects of the game. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's just as important as playing itself, as you can load into a battle without a proper team. That being said, team building itself has a lot of pitfalls and stuff that makes you think it looks good on paper, but actually ends up backfiring during the actual battle. In this video we talk about 5 of the most common team building mistakes and also how to overcome them. The concepts I talk about here are more or less general, and can be applied to tournament play or if you are simply trying to improve in this regard. While I'll mostly use examples in singles, I believe most of that terminology and overall notion could be applied to doubles formats as well. Knowing this, let's begin with the first mistake players commonly make, and this is building a team with no centerpiece or direction. I'll start with this one as I believe it is a cornerstone of team building itself, the idea behind the team you're making. Let's say you want to build a team but you have no clear idea of what it would look like. So you start putting Pokemon together that in theory have synergy between them, but once you start battling, the gameplay is a lot worse than you expected. You build this team thinking these 6 would in theory look good on a team without any practical basis on where you're using them, but then it ends up being just a big fat nothing burger. I've done this myself several times. This is where the idea of having a centerpiece comes from. You are better off by having a Pokemon or a core that you think works well in the current metagame and build around it. If you start with a simple concept and then work from there, chances are the team will come together on its own, or at the very least you'll have a very good idea of what it needs and how to best utilize the remaining 5 Pokemon slots to best support it. As an example, let's just say you want to build a team around Calm Mind, Stored Power Clefable in singles. You also want to use Terra Psychic on it since it will provide a solid stab option for stored power, as well as keeping Clefable as a fighting resist. Maybe the opponent you're facing in a tournament is commonly weak to it, or maybe you're just curious and want to try it out. Moving on, what do we do after we pick Calm Mind Clefable as a concept? We think about what Clefable needs. Since Clefable is commonly weak to steel and poison moves, a Pokemon like Corviknight will be solid with it. Corviknight can pivot into such moves with ease, as well as providing defog support and good defensive backbone overall. At this point you realize that your team is sort of passive and you'd like some offense for it not to be too reactive against threats. For this you need a wall breaker or something that hits hard. Choice Band Samacenta is a good option here. It packs enough of a punch to take care of some of the fat steel types that switch into Clefable, as well as providing immediate offense with fast and hard hitting close combats. It can also make the best out of Corviknight's U-turn, as steel types commonly switch into it. With this, you have a solid base for a team and all is left to do is to fill in the last 3 slots to whatever you need to cover. I'm not going to talk about all 6 slots as I think that derails from that topic a little bit, but you get the idea. This is an example of how accurate team building normally functions. You take an original idea and base your whole team around it. Now we move on to another mistake people make, and one that can actually prove fatal in most scenarios. The one I'm referring to is making overcomplicated EV spreads. EV spreads are very important. After all, they determine a Pokemon's stats, what it can and cannot do, how strong, bulky, and fast it is. Over the years I've developed many EV spreads where at the time I made them I was very satisfied, as if I had solved a very complicated equation or reached a line where nobody had been to before, only to find out that in practice the EV spread I made not only was not useful, it ended up backfiring because I either wasn't strong or bulky enough when I otherwise could have been. When making EV spreads, you need to get your priorities straight. You need to fully understand what the Pokemon's role is and what the areas of opportunity actually are. You don't need to have a mix of investment in 4 or 5 stats in a lot of cases. The Pokemon who can invest in different stats in order to do a variety of things are not common, and it takes a bit of trial and error to find the gem-like EV spreads. A Pokemon that could easily do it is Tyranitar in past generations, who thanks to its immediate bulk and solid offensive stats, it could run a variety of different EV spreads depending on what the player needed. But generally speaking, let's say you have a Pokemon like Latios, who is fast and can hit incredibly hard with Draco Meteor and awesome coverage, but Latios is also a relatively fragile Pokemon. So, does Latios care about getting hit and surviving attacks? Well, yes. But what Latios cares about the most is tearing teams apart and getting as many KOs as possible with its very powerful and varied move pool. You achieve this by attacking first and by hitting as hard as you possibly can, so your best choice is to invest all of your EVs in special attack and speed. This is oversimplifying things a bit. There are plenty of fast Pokemon that run a federal investment with some bulk in order to leave attacks from faster Pokemon or priority moves, but the general idea is that you need to have a good idea of what you want to use that Pokemon for and thus base your EV spread around it. Moving on, the next one might be something kind of obvious, but to this day many people, myself included, make this common mistake. This is not double checking sets and abilities. Let's say you've been building for a while, you've been in the zone cooking the spiciest team. You walk into a match where you're new, fresh, out of the box, universe shattering Dragonite Hyper Offense team. It is finally time to win the game. You unleash your Dragonite against an unboosted Iron Valiant to Dragon Dance up and send your opponent packing. You don't take damage from Stealth Rock, as you of course have the heavy duty boots equipped. Dragonite at full HP should be able to leave any hit because of its hidden ability Multiscale, but instead the opponent Moonblast and he gets O-Code. It turns out he had inner focus and not Multiscale all this time. So what happened? Did the team builder sabotage my jam? Of course not. This is a very classic example of autopilot building. Not only applied to Pokemon, but sometimes we spend so much time immersed and working on something that we miss even the most obvious mistakes. In Pokemon, it can be an unwanted ability, move, item, or even missing EVs. You subconsciously believe you put everything in there because it will make the most sense, but in reality you didn't. At least for now, teams are not built automatically. We actually have to put everything in there and double check that it is indeed what we want. I've seen so many cases like this over the years, where not checking sets before the match ends up losing you the game. If you are building a team on Pokemon Showdown, it is always a good idea to create the Pokepaste after thinking you're done, even if you won't show it to anyone. This way you can take a hard look and see if anything seems off, or if now that you're looking at the big picture you don't like the final product. This will make you more conscious about your edits from here on out. Alternatively, you can always show the team to somebody you trust just so they can confirm that everything seems right. An outsider look is sometimes what we need since they are not as invested in our work as we are, which leads to the next common mistake people make, and that is not validating or discussing your team. Like I said in the previous point, sometimes we are so invested in our work that we can miss the big picture. This happens a lot when we work alone. When we don't have anyone reviewing our work or somebody to discuss even the simplest topics, we tend to only have our own perspective and maybe miss something very important. In a context related to competitive Pokemon, this could very well be applied to team building. When we don't have anyone to discuss or validate our ideas with, we could end up deluding ourselves in thinking that we are making something good that actually isn't. In other words, we would end up cooking too hard. Discussing our ideas or teams with people we trust is often a way to subvert that. Explaining why we chose those sets helps not only the other person understand where we're coming from, but also helps confirm to ourselves that our idea has potential, or for better or worse, second guess it. This obviously isn't always possible, but if you don't have anyone like that in your corner, you could always turn to that community or people who are well positioned within it and considered trustworthy by their peers. It depends of course, but trust me, discussing your team with somebody else will help you determine whether you want to push forward with the idea or simply not follow up on it. This is actually one of my favorite parts of building itself. Building with the right people can be incredibly fun and can often lead to the most revolutionary teams and sets. One of my favorite anecdotes in this regard is when back in 2014, my friend Joey and I were building his team for SPL. He was playing Ubers at the time and we came up with a Hidden Power Fire Mega Gengar set used to trap steel types such as Scizor and Skarmory for his Arceus to sweep. We tested the set and it worked perfectly. After he succeeded with it in tournament, the set became the most commonly used one on Gengar. We wouldn't have felt so confident without testing the team though, which leads to the last topic I want to touch upon in this video. This is testing, or rather not testing the team. You have this great idea, you build this on paper amazing team, but does it actually work? Well, ideally we would like to test it first. A lot of players to this day skip this very important step. Maybe it is because we don't have time, or simply because we didn't find anyone of trust to test with, or maybe we didn't think we needed to. But generally speaking, not testing a team, especially in a generation as complex as Scarlet and Violet, can often lead to undesired results. There are so many things at play here. Team synergy, sets, EVs, Terratypes, and the overall flow of the game. If we don't play with our team before our match, odds are we are going to feel weird with it. Regardless of how much metagame knowledge you have, how much big game experience you hold, even if your intuition never fails you. There's a big difference between using a team for the first time and using a team for, I don't know, the 20th. There's probably no need to test a team 1,000 times, as you'll most likely burn yourself out. But it's just as they say, practice makes perfect. Testing the team is not only about confirming the team's strengths and weaknesses, it is also about adapting the team according to your experience with it and verifying if the battles are going the way you theorized. When it comes to team building, this is probably the most important step in the process. It's where everything comes together and where you can decide whether to continue using that team or go back to the board. If you can't find anyone you trust to test the team with, hitting the ladder under an owl can often give you what you need, as you have no idea what you might find in there. It may very well show you how the team works against matchups you didn't even consider before. Of course, it is not necessary to marry a team. Maybe tests are not going well and you feel like it is not the one. It's totally valid. But just getting those games will help you make that decision. And with that, we conclude our video for today. Team building can often be a very lengthy process, and it's a lot of trial and error. But when you get to that point where your team is exactly what you need it to be, it is very rewarding. Obviously, not everyone becomes a team building expert in a day. You need to keep at it, see what works for you and what doesn't. If there's anything in this video that you feel that doesn't apply to you, then you are very well within your rights as well. Only you know how to best tackle your creative process. Pokémon is a game with a lot of room for creativity, and you never know if something works unless you put it to practice, which makes it all the more exciting. Team building is an art, and working to find those 6 that can work in harmony against the rest of the meta is perhaps my favorite thing in Pokémon. In this video we talk about many of the mistakes I've noticed me and other players make over the years, but do you think there's other mistakes we didn't talk about here? Please let me know in the comments below. Before we go, I would like to give a shout out to my buddy Joey or Pokémon for helping me review the script for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching and see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.